you're nearly there. This is the final assessment task, and really this is about pulling together what you've learnt and reflecting on it. And I know reflection is one of those things that, when you're studying health in particular, that we keep coming back to it about this idea of reflection, and we have different models and different approaches to reflection. But really, when it gets down to the heart of what reflection is very much about thinking about what you did and seeing if there's a way to improve it, understanding what you did, understanding what happened around you, and thinking about, okay, could I have done this differently? And it's not always about negative things. Sometimes it's about something that happens that you're really happy with. So for instance, I love public speaking, and I tell you what, I spend a heap of time mulling over and reflecting on public speaking, even if I thought it went really well, and thinking about how I could improve it. So this is a really, really important part, arguably, of being a human, but of being a health practitioner, of stepping into the workforce, is being intentional about our learning. So this task very much is about that. Now, we've given you the Gibbs reflective cycle, and look, what we're going to do is we would recommend, what we want you to do is to use the framework, the 6 categories, and use them as headings, and then break up your paper according to that, so that it's really, really nice and clear. This is not something where we want you to, create a lengthy story. We want you to basically answer the questions. So identify something that's memorable as a part of this subject. It might be time where you were working with the community, or that the community asked you a question and you didn't know the answer. It might be that you did a presentation and it went really, really well. It could be, even just working on the first assessment task or working in group work. There's 1,000 different things that you can reflect on, but choose something that comes to mind as a moment, either positive or negative, it doesn't matter, but an experience that's memorable. And what we want you to do is to use this Gibbs reflective cycle, which basically walks you through, provide a description of what happened, a rich description of what happened. Explain to me what occurred so that I have an understanding of it, or your marker has an understanding of it. How did you feel? What were you thinking? What was going on in your head? It's all well to describe the fact that someone asked a question and your answer was this, and they said this, and then other people clapped and cheered. But what were the feelings that were going on? And sit with it for a moment. Sit back and go, okay, what was I feeling? Was I nervous? Was I excited? Was I worried? How were you feeling? What was the thought going through your head? Did you have what if questions going on? What were the thoughts going on? Now, an evaluation, what was good and bad about the experience? Even in positive experiences, that sometimes there's something about that that's bad. Perhaps you felt like something was going really well, and so you relaxed a little bit too much. What was good and bad about it? Analysis, how can you make sense of that? What was why was this thing happening? What can you learn about it by thinking and reflecting on it? Really kind of dig in and think about that experience so that you fully understand it. And then conclusion, what else could you have done? Now, obviously, if you've identified a challenging situation, this becomes not easier, but it becomes obvious. But we want you to think really deeply about how you could have engaged with this process better, or this moment better, and think about how you could have approached it differently. So if you were, presenting to the community and your experience was feeling embarrassed because you didn't know the answer to a question, then perhaps your approach might have been making sure that you were more prepared really early on, practicing, asking one another questions before the presentation so that you were really, really ready. So think about a number of different ways, or a couple of different ways that you could have actually engaged in this situation differently and gotten better outcomes, regardless of whether it was a good experience or a bad experience. And then your action plan. So what would you do differently in the future? So if you ended up having a big fight with your group and you reflected on that and it was a negative experience and, you feel like you could have done this, what's your plan into the future to avoid that situation in the future, to avoid having that big Barney in the future? Or if it's positive, what's your plan the next time you do a public speaking or the next time you do community engagement? How are you going to change what you've done in the past to change what you do in the future? Okay, every subject you do should have an impact on the way in which you engage with the world, with study. And so this assessment task is really formalizing that and saying, okay, how can you take what you've learned as a part of this and apply it to the next things that you're doing, because we know that you're going on to bigger and better things all the time. You have an incredible set of opportunities in front of you, and we want this subject to help prepare you for that. Really looking forward to reading these reflection tasks. I quite enjoy reading them. I think they're brilliant, and it just gives us a real sense of the impact that's being had and the things that you're working on at the moment. So looking forward to it. Make sure you ask lots of questions if you've got them. Use those categories that we've given you as headings to make it really, really simple. And we'll be marking each of those categories out of 10. So just make sure you think about them carefully and reflect deeply on them, and you'll do really, really well. Thank you.